My why is because I believe every single person deserves to be heard. That every single person has greatness within them.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Master Your Life. I'm Kate McKay, and I'm thrilled you are here. And I'm also absolutely thrilled to interview the beautiful, the amazing, the smart, the just, I don't even know. There's a whole bunch of adjectives to describe Katarina. Katarina, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for that. What a lovely start to my morning.
Yes. Well, I'm so glad you're here. And we talked a few weeks ago about doing this podcast, and here we are. And I'm just going to do a little intro on you. And then, as always, we're going to get right into our stories. Katarina is a high performance executive relationship coach and the founder of Successfully in Love Method. She is studied through the University of Oxford, and she's helped successful executives and entrepreneurs become as accomplished in their relationships as they are in their careers. And she uses something that we're going to get into, a three-part proven methodology that uses behavioral science. It also uses the science of attraction, and she helps disheartened executives transform their relationships for the better and fast and become successful in love, which isn't that what we all want, Ms. Katarina?
I think it is, right? I think we all want to be successful. I think we all want to be in love. Like, who doesn't?
Yeah, what else is there? Did you have a favorite fairy tale growing up?
Good question. Favorite fairy tale growing up? I don't think I did really. But a lot of the fairy tales I had, and you'll know this, were from Eastern Europe, and some of them were so dark. So dark
Exactly.
and so depressing, right? Now, I definitely did have a lot of favorites, but I don't know if I agree with a lot of their messages, right? I don't know if you've studied fairy tales. So many of them are like the victim female and it's like I'm happy to erase a lot of those from my brain. I don't know the healthiest thing to be carrying around.
Right. But they're
Yeah.
so interesting how they teach like moral lessons
Oh
and
yeah.
how much they infuse. And the reason why I'm asking you that is because I can tell you're very curious and that I
Mm.
guarantee you did read a lot about them and be like, ooh, because if you're in your position as a high executive coach in love, you are having to go into those darker places
Yeah.
with people and disrupting those core beliefs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's like
absolutely.
how do you blow up someone's image of the fairy tale in love and then help them redefine and rewrite their own script? Yes.
Yeah, totally, totally. And
Mm.
so many of those, I guess, kind of scripts and narratives that we inherit about love from TV, from like movies, from old wives' tales, from what our parents tell us, are so broken, right? There's this narrative that if you are a good little worker bee and you work away and you do your dues, eventually you'll meet your Prince Charming just like that, by luck, by chance, and he will sweep you off your feet and rescue you and pay for you and upgrade your life, and you won't have to worry about a thing. And it'll all be easy and it's all happily ever after. And it's like, well, no, that's not actually the case at all. Because in this day and age, in this economy, no one's coming to rescue you, right? You have to
Yes.
rescue yourself. And it's not going to happen by luck to an extent, but having a happy, successful, nourishing relationship doesn't happen by chance. It's
Mm.
work.
Why do you think it is that so much of the fairy tale stories are from the female perspective? Because you do coach a lot of men, which I love,
Yeah.
as do I. And I love it that you're from Eastern Europe. And I definitely
Yeah.
want to talk about that and how that
Mm.
has informed your work. But what are the lessons that men get?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've actually never pondered about that, other than I would imagine that if we think about who are the ones that a lot of the fairy tales are being read to or being shared to, who like what gender actually often likes storytelling and emotion, and often it is actually women, right? And so I wonder if that plays a role in it. Whether it's men or women who are listening to the fairy tale, it's the same narrative that's being perpetuated, right? Guy
100%.
has to
Yes.
rescue woman has to be little hardworking damsel in distress who's innocent and pure.
And acquiesces.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's such and I've never asked that question, nor have I ever seen it. And I think that it was based on our previous conversation. But I think that this is really what we're talking about in a lot of different ways, is that we have to look at the male perspective of what the story they were given and how that impacts the way they show up for women and vice versa, and how we can rewrite that story that honors the true masculine and the true feminine.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I completely agree. So I think there's a lot of re-education that we have to be doing. A lot of re-education, right? A lot of re-education, rewriting that narrative, educating ourselves on how is it in our day and age right now? How do we actually survive? How do we thrive? How do we actually build relationships? And what we know from science is that the quality of your relationships is the biggest indicator of your happiness in life, specifically the quality of your romantic relationship. So the stakes are actually really high. Literally, who you marry is going to dictate the quality of your mental health, the quality of your finances, the quality of your career, the business you're building. It's so important. So to take it for granted and just to think that it'll work itself out, it'll happen when the time is right, is a very, very, very passive mindset that frankly you can't really do in this day and age. It doesn't work.
Do you think people view it that they're looking at it from passive by just buying into the narrative? Because there is a part of it that is just buying into the narrative and expecting things to go as such, But I think people actively also pursue the narrative. Right? Much to the detriment. And I think much of your work, it sounds like, is dismantling that.
Yeah, absolutely. Dismantling that narrative. And again, kind of looking at what are the unhelpful stories that we have, right? The first thing I will do with any client is like help them look at the narratives in their head, the stories in their head. Women are this, men are that, women want this, men want that. I'm unsuccessful in dating because of this. The type of woman that I want to marry has these kind of traits. Do they want this? I talked to a guy the other day who's a coach himself, literally kill me now, who said that he's single because his dream woman, and this is like, just a average guy. He said that his dream woman has to be a 10 out of 10 looks wise. She has to be a 10 out of 10, nothing below a 10 out of 10, but it doesn't matter what he looks like. She has to be a 10 out of 10. And the reason he can't get a 10 out of 10 is because he doesn't have the money or the fashion that would attract her. And I'm like, I've yet to come across a woman who's like judging a guy on his fashion, and that's the marker of why she'd date you or not. Like, where did you get that from?
Right.
What a weird thing to believe, right?
Yeah, how do you blow that one up? That sounds like that's more a therapeutic issue than a coaching issue.
Absolutely. And then he's like, and the amount of men as well, he like want a 10 out of 10. And I'm thinking, but you're a 4 out of 10. So yes, maybe you do need some money to bring in a young, naive 10 out of 10, but my goodness, is that really the quality of relationship that you want?
And I think the challenge is that they think there is a lot of people that want that. So talk to me a little bit about, who did you want to be when you grew up, Katarina?
Good question. Well, it definitely wasn't this.
No?
I wanted to be a vet.
You want to work with animals. Well, you kind of do.
Oh my God, that's the best quote of my day. I love that.
Yes, pretty much.
That's actually made my day. Thank you for that. I love animals. I care for them deeply. And I really wanted to become a vet. I think now my vision is, to become an animal philanthropist in the future one day. But it was to be a vet. Then it was to be a writer, which, I write a fair amount. So fair enough, I do a lot of that. I was interested in psychology, but I remember looking around at my family and thinking like, this is what psychology is. Like, I don't want to go here. It's too much. But then I ended up studying literature and kind of social sciences. And then I went deeper and deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole of behavioral science and social science. And again, analyzing how humans interact, how humans behave, how society is formed. And I began to study masculinity and femininity and communication. And that's when I realized, like, okay, I'm in the realm of psychology, whether I like it or not, but psychology within kind of more broader behavioral science lens. And then slowly but surely, my career led me to working in behavioral science professionally, which I realized I loved. I actually loved it. The longest job I ever held down working for someone else. The longest job I've ever held down is working for myself. But before that, it was actually working for a behavioral science company. And it's because every day I felt like I was learning. It was so interesting. And I wasn't learning kind of little platitudes. And, it wasn't like therapy that I was learning. I was learning about the deep inner workings of the human brain and how people react and how to work with people, how to influence people, how to help people be happier. And eventually in that corporate job, to be honest, I just got a little bit bored, and I was like, I think it's time for me to leave and to build my own thing, whatever that is. And I started doing executive coaching, thinking that's what everyone has to do, right? We all become executive coaches. And obviously my father's an executive coach. So started out doing that, found it pretty dull. I'm not going to lie, kind of working on topics like delegation. And, I was like, no, I can't. And I remember in those early sessions, when I'd be working on a topic like delegation, I would end up drilling down into the client's brain of how is it they're struggling with delegation? What is the psychological blocker? And in the end, I was like, oh, I'm back to doing, so I'm doing behavioral science here, right? I'm doing much deeper work. I'm looking at the subconscious blockers. And as I kept drilling down into that, I realized so many people, the same blockers that are showing up in their professional life are showing up in their romantic relationships. And that's where the conversation would typically lead to. Because I mean, you know this, right? With a coaching relationship, you develop a kind of loose friendship. I mean, you see them, frequently. They share a lot of vulnerable things,
very
right?
deep too.
Absolutely.
And loose, but deep, but not equal. I think that's the biggest challenge with people who are in the coaching realm, don't you think? Is that
absolutely,
build such intimacy that they think that we're equal in the intimacy, but it's all about the client. It's 80% the client and 20% us. So it's not true intimacy, which is a dangerous
100%.
situation in people in any kind of behavioral science world. Yes,
I agree with that. Ultimately, the more that people shared about their personal lives, their marriages, the more I was like, okay, this is really interesting, and I know I can help you. And so as I began to help them more loosely, I realized, okay, I have a knack for this. I have a passion for this. This energizes me in a way that I didn't feel before. And so I just started to build them. I partnered with a trauma psychologist to build out the framework for my methodology and sense check. Like, am I doing this okay? Like, is this right? Is this appropriate? Does this work? And once I got her approval and I began testing it on a small subset of people and I got really good results, then I trademarked it, made it into a methodology and began rolling it out. And so it is coaching in the sense of a lot of my clients will have a therapist and me. And then in therapy, they will talk about the story of why things are the way they are and where it all comes from. And then they come to me of like, well, what do I do now? How do I get rid of this? Help me, right? And that's what I love to do, kind of roll my sleeves up, bring that corporate mindset, KPIs, let's go, let's actually get this done and help them improve their love lives.
It's so good. Well, you're working on the good part, which is you don't have to necessarily, because I don't know, I feel like we overuse the why in our culture. And really, we want to know what it is and who we're here to impact ultimately. And the who could be, who am I here to love and who am I here to grow and learn more through with, which is so profound.
Yeah.
Really beautiful. I look forward to hearing some more about those 3 different phases, which we'll get into as well. You've had an interesting cultural experience growing up, being birthed in one country and moving to other countries, and now you're in Vancouver. How has that been for you, going through different cultures? What has been the common thread and what has been different for you as you've moved through these different worlds?
That's such a great question. And it's one I was reflecting on more recently. And I think I identify as kind of a third culture kid, which I didn't even know what that was, right? For a long time. Then I was like, oh no, this is like me, because I was born in Slovakia, split my time between Slovakia and Russia for a young age, came to England, experienced like pretty horrible, I wouldn't say racism, but there was a lot of kind of prejudice against Eastern Europeans back then in the early 90s, right? So that was pretty hard in my family. But we got through, and I lived in the UK till I was like 19. Then I went to Italy for a year, came back. Then I went to Dubai for 2 years, came back. Sorry, I lied. I went to Spain for a year, came back, then Dubai for 2 years, came back. Then I went to Canada for 5 years, met my ex-fiance, was engaged, called it off, stayed for a little bit longer. Then I left back to Europe, was in London. Then I met my husband. We moved to Spain, lived in Spain, realized why we're living in Spain, this is madness, and moved back to Canada. So
wow.
That's been
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so incredible.
It
sounds exhausting, but tell me more about this third culture mentality. as an emotional, as a psychological experience, and how do you feel this informs your work?
Yeah. Well, I think I have clients all around the world, right? And so many of my clients are immigrants, but not in kind of more of the, they moved countries when they were younger, right? So I have I'm working with the COO of a global, huge corporation. When I discovered her salary, I was like, wow, that is quite a salary. And, we really understand each other because she moved countries when she was 4. She only moved to the US. It's not like she moved somewhere drastic, but she moved to the US. It's still a culture change there. Her family are all abroad. And I think a lot of the, and I have a lot of, like literally immigrant clients. And what's really interesting is the patterns there that I see is a high achiever mindset. And I do believe that's because as a little immigrant, when you move countries and you're exiled in the playground and you're rejected, you start to think, oh boy, I got to prove myself, right? Because you've been rejected and it hurts and you don't feel good enough and you feel bad and you feel unlovable. And so that fuels this kind of drive of, I remember for me, it was this drive of like, well, screw you all. I'm going to be really fucking smart. I'm sorry. I'm going to be really, really smart. I'm gonna be smart. I'm gonna prove myself so that even if I have no friends, even if I'm like the weirdo, I'm gonna be the smart weirdo. I'm gonna be smarter than all of you. That was literally my drive. It was this kind of defiance, and it served me well. And I see the same thing with a lot of my clients, this drive of, well, if you think I don't matter, I'm going to prove that I matter. I'm going to get myself some power. I'm going to get myself into a position in a corporate job where actually like I'm your boss, right? All of this is subconscious. It's all subconscious. But I see that a lot, this kind of like chip on your shoulder that leads to this incredible drive and ambition. And as I also see this kind of wounding of feeling rejected and feeling not good enough, which will show up in the relationship later in life, right? It'll show up as this kind of anxious, avoidant stance where we work harder to numb out the pain of not feeling good enough. And again, that fuels so much of our brilliant success, but it doesn't really help us in our relationships. And I know for me, what's been really important is to create a sense of home inside of myself, as cliche as it is, but really to recognize that bits of me are in Slovakia, bits of me are in Russia, though I don't really obviously go back there right now. Bits of me are in the UK, bits of me are in Canada, bits of me are in Spain, like bits of me are in all over. And there's a kind of fracturing, but actually they're just little different parts of the whole that is inside of me. And that comes down to recognizing that I'm home and I'm safe inside of myself, in my own spirit, in my own identity. And wherever I go, I'll actually be okay, right? And that's kind of a universal, kind of trans-cultural thing that we can all tap into. It's like feeling secure in yourself.
Yes. What a beautiful, like literally write a book on that.
Yeah.
Literally write a book on, because that is massive and beautiful framing.
Yeah.
And it's also a summation of how you apply all of your work. Because the studies show, particularly with men, I think I told you I lost a son to suicide in 2017. And much of my work in writing Claim Your Inner Warrior was doing research on men and their psychology. And to discover that in our culture, we think, oh, men, their primary need is to be respected, when really their primary need is to be emotionally safe, because men don't feel safe. Women maybe want physical safety and connection, but men want psychological safety, and we provide it. And you just described it so beautifully, that the defiance, that I will prove it, that, that how the rejection has put and I'm just repeating what you said because I take notes, that it creates this avoidance. And then that, as you mentioned earlier, the way they are professionally, the way we are show up professionally as high performers and achievers, is a reflection of our relationship. Yes. Can you talk a little bit about that bridge of how we show up in work and how we show up in intimate relationships?
Yeah.
Where
there's so many things to say. Yeah, so many things to say. I think one of the ways, for better or for worse, that I've seen it show up both in myself and in clients is when you learn to be a high achiever, because it's a learned behavior, right? And you learn to be efficient, productive, get things done, be responsible, be on top of things, be a go-getter, right? And you get points for that. You get points for that in society, get points for that at work. And then when it comes to relationship, you don't really get points for that, but we kind of bring it over because it's what we know best. And
Oh.
on the one hand, I want to honor that quality because that's the quality that gets people reaching out for help. Right. Typically, my clients will reach out to me like, I don't know what to do. I don't want to drag my partner to marriage counseling. I don't want to do X, Y, and Z because I don't think it's going to work. I want to fix it. I want to fix it because I can fix everything else in my life. So tell me what to do. And I'm like, okay, we can start with that. It's a good energy to begin with. It doesn't mean that you're going to be the sole thing to fix the entire relationship, but let's start with that. That intentionality is great, right? That kind of motivation. So that can be good. Where it starts to get tricky is when the relationship becomes a project and we bring that kind of, you know, my own coach called it a taskmaster attitude to our relationship, right? Of like, well, this needs doing and this needs doing and this needs doing, and you're not good enough here, and you're not doing that, and this and this and this and this. And it comes across as criticism and contempt.
That
right?
is not sexy.
Not sexy. We know from Gottman, it's like one of the main indicators of a divorce, right? It's not good. So there's this kind of unlearning that has to happen in relationship where we do soften and we do kind of not lower our standards. I'm not saying that, but we invite more compassion and more empathy and more understanding and more grace. And again, it's a balance because how do you bring that kind of energy without turning into a parent? Because I see that a lot, right?
Yes.
Especially with women. And I see it with men as well, that they kind of in bringing that compassion, it flip-flops very quickly into this parent-child energy, which is also not
Yes.
good.
Ew,
So again,
yucky, right?
yeah,
So what
totally.
is the commodity though? And the reason why I'm
Mhm.
asking you this is because while you were describing the gamification of relationship and how we can kind of flip it. Okay, so this is where you are professionally, and okay, how we can flip it to this other game. And I pictured Monopoly, right? Did you
Yeah.
ever play Monopoly as a kid?
I didn't, only because I didn't understand numbers well.
Well, it's just
That's
like
not
so
very-
weird, but like you buy a house and a hotel, like
Yeah.
you land on something and you buy it. So the
Yeah.
commodity is real estate, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
what's the commodity of a loving relationship? How do we weigh value both in what we give and what we receive in the game of love?
Mm. So your question is, what's the commodity of love?
Of love, like what is it that we measure? If
Mm.
we are so used to as high achievers, right? Talk about a mind shift for us, you and I,
Yeah.
as the high achievers, having to prove something, something, something. So
Mhm.
how is it that we land on something, on our board game of love, of life, and are able to measure it? Is it how we feel? Is it how the impact we make? What is that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think we measure it. Oh, there's so many ways, right? I think one of the main things that we have to learn, and this is probably the hardest thing for us to learn, is that balance of really accepting our partners for who they are because we accept ourselves for who we are and letting go of our desire to change them because we've let go of our desires to change ourselves. That's like the bigger, kind of more spiritual connection, right? When you feel so secure in yourself and you love yourself and you're at peace with who you are, you're not going to want to change and criticize your partner. They're either going to be right for you, in which case you stay and you love them with grace and you're not controlling them. You're kind of letting them be free in your love, or they're not going to be right for you, in which case they're going to be like, okay, goodbye. It's all good,
Yes.
right? There's
It
no
is,
kind of
yes.
ego, there's no kind of judgment, there's no kind of shaming. It's this kind of very, I love it how Michael Singer, he talks about it in, I think it's The Untethered Soul or the subsequent book, where he's like, you know, when you're so surrendered and at peace in yourself and your partner comes down the stairs and they're like, hey, I want a divorce. You're like, okay, I'll help you pack. Right? It's just like you're so surrendered. There's so much acceptance. I think that's kind of like the bigger picture. On a more granular level, I think what we're really looking for when we're thinking about evaluating love is, do I feel safe with this person? Safe to be myself in all of my, you know, glory and all of my warts and all of my vulnerabilities? Am I safe? Do I feel understood and seen and heard by them, which also links to safety? And I want to say respect. Do I respect and do I honor my partner? Are they someone that I respect? Because I think that's a really key thing, that often we don't actually respect our partners, right? Especially if we're high achieving go-getters. Very
I like
often
that
there's this,
I like it that you said respect and honor, because I
yeah,
think that those are very different. They're
yeah,
both beautiful and exalted. But if you take the word like I respect myself, if you ask somebody, what does it mean to honor yourself? They always go like this. Oh,
mm,
oh. Because
yeah,
respect is something that gives you that edge, right?
yeah,
Because it's like, you respect me, but then honor is so noble. It's such a
yeah,
gorgeous word. And I do believe that self-love, self-respect, and self-honor are the important triage, the
yeah,
trinidad of full self-love and
yeah,
self-acceptance, and how we, through the lens to which we love others. Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I agree
Described
with
it
you.
exactly, perfectly.
I agree with you. I think that there is something really about, yeah, respecting and honoring the humanity of your partner and honoring the spirit, right? Often when we're in a conflict, all we see is like the horrible gremlin side of our partner, but actually it's like, no, 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 no. You're just seeing like the broken inner child that's like freaking out over there. And actually, let's just put that aside and honor the spirit and the essence of who this person is. And again, let go of our defenses. Being defensive does not protect us ever. It really doesn't.
Never. Isn't it
It never works.
horrible? Talk about building your own coffin.
Yeah.
Hammering from the inside, instead of the outside, then
Oh,
bolting
I
in
love your
your own
analogies.
coffin, drilling,
Yeah, yeah,
closing your own top off. It's crazy. Talk to
yeah.
me a little bit about what I love about you so much, and you won't know this because you are in your place, as you described it, is like your own home. But being from Eastern Europe, and I love it because that is the foundation of me. My mom is
Yeah.
Polish and German. What is it that you bring to this whole conversation from the perspective of where you are from as an Eastern European woman? What are the
Mm.
values that you feel is unique for you, Boo? Because you're very unique. First of all, I just want to say you're absolutely beautiful. You're
Oh, thank
physically
you.
beautiful. You have a beautiful soul about you, but you're also very strong and tough in that way. And I don't mean tough, but like strong in your own energy. And I do believe that that's probably why you are so successful and why men lean on you, because you have that strong feminine strength and essence.
Hmm.
But it's so lacking. And I'm an American girl. And I'm telling you right now, we need a lot more of you.
Don't make me cry on a podcast. My goodness. Thank you.
True,
So
dude.
kind of you
I
to
mean, I don't
say
mean to
that.
call you dude, but
No, thank you. Honestly, thank you. That's really kind of you. And honestly, what a lovely start morning. I think that you're right. I think that there is something really interesting about the Slavic, Eastern European feminine energy, because I think that collectively and historically, we've been through a lot of shit. We've been through so much shit and oppression and war and starvation and persecution and
yes,
prejudice and
yes.
patriarchy, right? And like, again, I look at a lot of my kind of Russian girlfriends and I'm like, oh no, like alcoholism is like a real problem in like family history and like domestic violence. And there's a lot of really dark things that happen there. And so, and again, so much bloody war that I think that does create this strength, right? And again, I love it when I connect with a Russian girlfriend and, I might show up and I'm like, I've softened, right? My Slovakian side is very soft. I'll come and I'll be like crying about Ukraine war. And I'm like, oh God. And they're just like, so what? It's another war. It's another war. Just get over it. Like, bang, bang,
Exactly.
bang, let's go. And
Wow.
I do think that there is merit in that. I think there is merit in kind of being like, we're not going to collapse. We're not going to go into a state of shock. We're just going to pick ourselves up and get on with it. And we're going to be kind about it. And we're going to tend, we're going to help as many people as we can. And I think that is a very unique quality, right? Of I'm going to be strong and I'm still going to lean in and be supportive and be loving and extend grace. But I'm not going to be crying all over the place and, being a wet blanket because that's not going to help anyone.
But it's so beautiful. This is another thing you have to write about from this perspective.
Hmm.
Because you said that we're strong and yet we're still going to tend, which is a very interesting choice of word. We're still going to tend to the needs of others. It's beautiful. That's a great word. Those two words together pretty much just personified everything.
Oh, thank
We're
you.
still going to tend, you said.
Yeah. It's not like we're going to be strong and just abandon and like flee, right? And fend for
or
ourselves.
fall apart or wait to get rescued or it's a very interesting, we will persevere.
Yeah.
And we won't lose faith or hope that we are here to tend to the needs of others through our strength. Isn't that the divine feminine?
I think it is. I think you're right. I think it is. And again, I'll never forget when I do really appreciate, like, again, what we talked about earlier, I really appreciate how a lot of Slavic women, they'll put on makeup, they'll put on lipstick, because culturally, for better or for worse, there's still this like, well, no, I still want to look nice. I still want to indulge in beauty. And what I really value, I think, is like, I love beauty. I love pretty things. I like pretty smells. I like pretty fabrics. I just do. And I think for a long time I questioned it. I was like, well, that's not very practical. And, that's really expensive. And is this not really bad for me that I'm applying lipstick on? And I'm like, but no, like, I like it. I like the art. And I think there's something to be said about infusing the struggle of the day-to-day with art, right? I don't think we do enough of that. I think that's a really wonderful trait that I think I've got from my culture of like, like just put art, like make things nice. Like when I get back to Slovakia and I'm in a cafe, I was there a few weeks ago, like the little coffee cup is so pretty and like the little biscuit is like so nice and like the little napkin. I'm like, this is like, it's not a Starbucks mug. This is like pretty.
But it's pretty. It's so interesting because the quote that I had on paper that when I sat down with you and turned the page was this quote, which is beauty remains even in misfortune. If you just look for it, you discover more and more happiness and regain your balance.
That's lovely.
That's Anne Frank looking out the
that.
window at a barren tree in the winter and finding beauty in that moment. And that truly is what it is, isn't it?
It is. Because what's the point of life if not that? Like, actually, right? Otherwise, it literally might as well start digging our own graves and being miserable.
So true.
Yeah. I was reflecting on this as well. And I was thinking, there are so many horrors in the world and so many hard things in the world. And we can all go crazy just ruminating on them and getting stuck in them. But actually, let's just enjoy the beauty of what we have around ourselves. I was eating a bit of toast this morning. I was eating a bit of bread and I was like, oh my God, this bread is delicious. And I stopped in the hallway and I was eating on the way to get a coffee. And I stopped for just a second to be like, this is delicious. Like the pleasure of this. And to your point, I think that is the feminine energy.
It is.
Right? But it's not trying to be feminine. It's not trying to be masculine. It's just like, we're privileged to have this moment in time to enjoy this piece of bread. That's really delicious. Right.
And I learned that through my mom, who the sensual pleasure.
Yes.
And that's because her mom like came over on a boat from Poland. It's like the simple pleasures.
Yeah.
Are truly what is the essence. And isn't that what you do in your work? Bringing people back to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Because when we think about healing a relationship, so much of it, yes, you have to work on your own subconscious blocks. You have to clear them out. You have to do that, that inner piece of the journey. But when it comes to reconnecting to your partner, there really is something around, let's just simplify things as best as we can. Yes, there are conflicts. Yes, there are resentments. And we have to process those and clear those out. But when it comes to creating intimacy, when it comes to creating love, it's not actually that complex. It's just because we as a culture have become so addicted to dopamine hits and quick rewards, right? And we always want something more, we always want something bigger and better. That's a kind of symptom of capitalism, right? But actually, relationships are not a ton of quick dopamine hits. They're like a slow and steady burn of stability and peacefulness and feeling seen and feeling understood. And like, they're not meant to be exciting and whirlwind and whatever we get told by Hollywood and by fairy tales and all of that.
So the commodity is peace.
Yeah.
Commodity,
Ultimately.
acceptance. The
Yeah.
commodity is to be understood.
I think it is. I think the commodity is peace, right? I know like something I feel really appreciative of with my husband that I've never had with a previous partner is like the level of peace that I feel with him, knowing that I can go through any kind of health crisis, touch wood, I can go through financial challenges, I can go through anything. I can show up, literally looking like a bat out of hell. Sometimes I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, my goodness, my hair's sticking up all over the place, got bags under my eyes, my skin's bad, And he just looks at me and he's just like, just like, yeah, like, I love you and you're fine. You don't need to do anything. And I'm like, so critical on myself. And that's the piece, right? Like he's seeing me without wanting to change me. And same thing for him, he'll be very self-conscious of what he looks like, what's going on for him. And I'm like, I don't see any of that. I don't see any of that. There's this peace and that acceptance and like, I don't want to change you. You're good enough as you are. You're fine. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is the seminal work of you, of that.
Yeah.
And I'll also say to you that I think it's even more than this. That I think this is a beautiful foundation. And I see more than this for you. I feel as though your soul is called here to have a beautiful, large, delicious impact. And I simply cannot wait to see where this journey takes you.
Oh,
yeah, it's really beautiful. Yeah, oh, I know so. I feel it because you've earned it, Boo.
Thank you.
You've earned it through the hard work of proving. And now you have everything that you need to take this to another level. I would love it if you would just, and obviously we're going to share all of your information. Anyone who's listening who wants more information around Katarina, please reach out to her. Again, has a science-backed system, real proven strategies. She hasn't missed anything in order to bring a high level experience to you as a client, as a person that's going to be part of her community. So highly recommend reaching out to her. We're going to share all that information. If you don't mind just going through the system briefly so that we can hear more about that. I apologize if I've been a little bit more esoteric with you because I just feel like there's so much interesting thing about you. Right when you came on camera, I'm like, ooh, this is going to be interesting. I was excited. So if you don't mind just sharing your work and your system with us, I would so appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I work in what I call the behavioral science of attraction. And I coined that term because it's behavioral science, but I'm kind of playing on the side of like law of attraction, right? Because fundamentally, what we know from behavioral science is that you attract into your life, in your relationships, what you are on the inside, right? It's an inner job. It's always an inner job. If I believe that I'm useless and not good enough and that I'm going to be abandoned, well, guess what I'm going to attract into my life? That is literally neuroscience. It's not me being woo-woo. And so when I think about the behavioral science of attraction, my curiosity with clients was, okay, well, what are you attracting into your life on a subconscious level without realizing it? What do you need to be attracting into your life to be happy long term? And how do you go about doing that? And so it's a three-pronged process. Step number one, I call it liberation. And that's identifying what are the subconscious blockers that you have going on? What are the patterns? What's your wiring when it comes to love? And how can we actually liberate you from the stuff that's not working? And that's, again, using neuroscience. It doesn't take long. Once you know what to do and you know how to work with the brain, it can be pretty fast. Very kind of Joe Dispenza style stuff. And then reconditioning work. So that's the liberation phase. Phase two is reconnect. So now that you've cleared out the blocks and you have more clarity on who you are because you're no longer being held back by your blind spots, let's really dig deep and connect to your authentic self, to your essence, and identify who are you at your core. When you take away the Ferrari, the Porsche, the job, whatever it might be that you're hiding behind, who are you at your core? And what is it that you truly fundamentally need in life to be happy? It's probably not going to be the multi-million-dollar mansion. Like, let's be honest. Doesn't mean you have to give it up, but let's infuse that with a bit more meaning for you. So you're not just grinding for the sake of grinding. And then step number three is create. So once we've liberated you from your blocks, reconnected you with the essence of who you are, let's create strategies to actually get those needs met. And that's when we use a lot of that behavioral science. We use different relational science techniques, communication, imago, Gottman materials, somatic work, learning how to put boundaries, learning how to express your needs, learning how to navigate conflict, learning how to actually make things happen in your life. But all these different kind of strategies we want to be implementing. And so that's the third stage. And once you've done that, really the idea behind it is that your life will have transformed. And it won't just be a relationship, it'll probably be other areas of your life as well. I have a client who, she came to me really kind of ready to leave her husband, right? Her initial request from me was, I need to leave my husband. I need your help figuring out my plan B, my exit. And it's been 7 months, and they're now potentially going to start trying for another baby. They're evaluating what their future will look like, where they want to move to, the kind of adventures they want to have together. He's totally transformed because he was inspired by her transformation.
Wow.
Right? She feels safer, she feels calmer. She's kind of questioning, like, why am I grinding so hard at work? And do I really want to be away from my kids this much? And how do I actually create the same level of wealth and abundance with my husband in a way that we feel like a team that feels more nourishing than me disappearing to my corporate office every day for long hours? And so they're kind of entering this new chapter. And that didn't take long. That was 7 months from like literally get me a divorce lawyer to, oh, wow, now we're actually going to have another baby, right?
Wow.
Pretty amazing
Yes.
stuff. Yeah.
So
love this work.
rewarding.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
rewarding.
rewarding. So liberation, reconnection, and creation.
Yes.
Those are really fabulous words. Really fabulous. So just one question, and then I have one more follow-up, but what gets in the way for people?
What gets in the way of them doing this work? Or
Yeah, gets in the way of finding the love that we all long for?
I can tell you 2 things. One, not doing the homework, not being disciplined, right? Literally, I have some people who think it's sufficient to complain about the problem, talk to me once a week, and then not implement anything that I share. Not going to work. Don't pay me for that. You don't need to pay me for that. Talk to ChatGPT. Don't talk to me. That's number one. And number 2 is not taking accountability for how you are contributing to the problem. If I hear people say, it's all my wife's fault or it's all my husband's fault, and if only he would do this and I need him to do that and blah, 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 it's like, how disempowering is that? You can't control them.
Not at
You can
all.
control how you're speaking to them. You can control how you're showing up. You can control your communication. You can control the energy that you bring to the dynamic. You can control whether they're going to get triggered or not. You can control all of that. And when you control that, they're going to change. So let's take ownership of that, right?
Yeah, that's very difficult for people. Now, doing the self-reflective work and then taking accountability. It's like, that's it right there.
Yeah.
The double whammies.
Yeah.
Think about the beautiful hope around that is that something that seems so complicated can be so simple.
Yes.
It's simple to say it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
You just have to go with that level of willingness that I'm ready to give up the fight and unscrew that that I locked myself in, to feel and build that inner safety that you described, that you created for yourself.
Yeah.
Through being that person that's moved around so much, it really is within you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good. So powerful. So anything else that you would like to finish off with that you want the audience to know?
That we're all capable of having a healthy, happy, nourishing relationship. Every single person on this planet is. Really. How it looks might be different to how it looks to the person next to you, but you are capable and you can. You just need to learn the capabilities and you need to be motivated to do it, right? But that's just a practice of learning. You can learn all of that stuff. So if you want to, get out there and start learning. It's never too late. I have clients come to me in their 60s, right? And they find love and they're happy. It's so worth it. It's so worth it. Literally, your health will improve, your finances will improve, your career will improve, like all of the different markers will improve, because when you're happy at home, you're going to be happy elsewhere. Yeah.
You're never too old to find love.
Never too old. Literally, never too old.
Oh my gosh. So where can people find you, Katarina?
Yeah, so you can find me on my website, www.katarinapolonska.com. I have my 2 masterclass links there. So I have a 20-minute masterclass to show you how to transform your relationship if it's not going so well. And then I have a 55-minute masterclass for singles on how to find love. So wherever you are in your life, definitely check those out. You can also contact me on LinkedIn. I tend to be there most of the time from a DM's perspective. So just find me, Katarina Polonska. You can type in science-backed relationship coach and I should come up there. They'll be the best places.
That's great. And so it's Polonska, Polonska.
SKA. Yeah, exactly.
So anyone,
Polonska.
yeah, if you're listening, if you're driving, that's the spelling there.
Yes.
And Katarina, thank you so much. I appreciate
Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing the work into the world. And yeah, I look forward to seeing and hearing all about you. And I look forward to releasing this podcast to the world because
Thank you.
the message
Thank
is-
you. Thank you.
So
Thank you so much
everyone.
for having me.
It's my pleasure. And thanks to all of you for tuning in to another episode of Master Your Life. I'm Kate McKay. And until next time, remember, it's never too late to feel liberated, to reconnect with yourself, and to create the life and the love of your dreams. Take good care, everyone.